This is the story of one of the most iconic airports ever built, what happened when it was torn apart, and where hundreds of thousands of tons of concrete, asphalt, and contaminated earth actually ended up. Kai Tak Airport in Hong Kong operated for 73 years, and when it finally closed in 1998, the city faced a problem nobody had ever dealt with before. How do you recycle an entire airport? To understand the scale of what was demolished, you first have to understand what was built. Kai Tak wasn't just a runway. It was a 246-hectare complex of terminals, cargo buildings, fuel systems, and one of the most famous landing strips in aviation history, a runway that jutted out into Victoria Harbour like a dare. When it opened in 1958, runway 1331 stretched 8,297 feet. By the time it closed, crews had extended it to over 11,000 feet, 3,390 meters of reinforced pavement built to handle the heaviest wide-body aircraft in the world. And all of it had to go. The story of Kai Tak's demolition is really three stories woven together. It's a story about engineering, about environmental crisis, and about how a city reinvents the ground beneath its feet. At 11:38 p.m. on July 5, 1998, Dragonair Flight KA-841 touched down at Kai Tak for the last arrival. Minutes later, just after midnight on July 6th, Cathay Pacific Flight CX-251 pushed back for the last scheduled commercial departure. Then, at 1:16 in the morning, the Director of Civil Aviation, Richard Siegel, said 5 words into the silence: "Goodbye, Kai Tak, and thank you." He threw the switch and the runway lights went dark for the last time. What followed was one of the most extraordinary logistics operations Hong Kong had ever attempted. Between 5:30 p.m. on July 5th and 6:30 a.m. on July 6th, the government executed a race against time relocation. More than 1,100 vehicle trips, 14 barge voyages, and 30 aircraft movements transferred the beating heart of Hong Kong's aviation system from Kai Tak to the brand new Chek Lap Kok Airport on Lantau Island. An entire international airport changed addresses overnight. But while Chek Lap Kok roared to life, Kai Tak fell silent. And silence in Hong Kong is an invitation to build. Demolition work began in October 1998, barely 4 months after closure. 33 buildings sat on the old airport site, everything from the passenger terminal to cargo warehouses, maintenance hangars to fuel depots. By the year 2000, almost all of them had been reduced to rubble. Only the passenger terminal, its adjacent car park, and a former air cargo building remained standing. Tearing down buildings was the easy part, though. The real challenge lay beneath the surface. Imagine pouring aviation fuel, petrol, paint, sump oil, and a catalog of other toxic chemicals into the ground, not for a year or a decade, but for the better part of a century. That's exactly what had happened at Kai Tak. The apron area alone, where aircraft had been parked and serviced for decades, contained more than 300,000 cubic meters of contaminated soil spread across over 10 hectares. This wasn't just dirty ground. It was a carcinogen-soaked time bomb, and the government had earmarked this land for houses, playgrounds, and schools. Hong Kong had never performed a large-scale industrial site cleanup before. The question wasn't just how do you do it, but how clean do you make it? Government engineers spent years decontaminating underground fuel tanks and excavating poisoned earth, and while that invisible work continued below ground, something remarkable was happening on the surface. The runway itself had become a storage yard. 600,000 cubic meters of construction waste from the demolition project sat piled on the old tarmac. 600,000 cubic meters, enough material to fill roughly 240 Olympic swimming pools, all of it just sitting there on the same runway where 747s had once made their legendary checkerboard approach. But this wasn't laziness or neglect, it was strategy. Senior engineer Mok Pang Ching explained the logic plainly. Having it sitting on the tarmac is a good way to save on the transportation costs of taking it to landfill sites. It is also environmentally friendly because we can reuse it for future construction of the new town on the site. The old airport was being stored on top of itself, waiting to be reborn. The Kai Tak redevelopment project pioneered on-site construction and demolition waste recycling in Hong Kong. A complete set of specialized equipment was brought onto the site to process the debris where it lay. The system worked in 4 stages. Raw demolition waste was collected and sorted, broken concrete was sieved and stockpiled by size, steel reinforcement bars were extracted and sent for recycling, and only the truly unusable fraction was sent to landfill. The results were extraordinary. Recycling the demolition waste from Kai Tak produced an estimated 2.3 million tons of usable aggregates, which contributed roughly 10% of Hong Kong's total annual aggregate demand. Broken concrete and asphalt were crushed and processed into recycled aggregates and granular materials, then found new life as road subbases, drainage layers, and fill material for site formation across the territory. In 2002, the Hong Kong government formalized this approach by setting up a dedicated recycling facility to produce different sizes of recycled aggregate from construction and demolition materials. What began as a practical solution at Kai Tak was becoming policy. The numbers from Hong Kong's broader construction waste management tell the rest of the story. The city generates enormous volumes of construction and demolition materials, around 14 million tons annually, spiking to over 20 million tons in peak years like 2004. In 2022 alone, 18.2 million tons of construction waste were generated across Hong Kong. But here's the crucial figure. The recovery rate for reusable and recyclable construction waste has now reached approximately 90%. And the Kai Tak demolition was one of the projects that helped establish that benchmark. Most of the materials processed across Hong Kong each year fall into what's classified as public fill, inert materials suitable for direct reuse. As Secretary for Development, Bernadette Lin explained, most of the construction waste generated locally is inert construction waste, commonly known as public fill, which includes rock, rubble, sand, concrete, asphalt, brick, tile, and is non-decomposable materials that can be reused as construction materials. In a typical recent year, roughly 45,800 tons per day of public fill are generated in Hong Kong, amounting to about 16.8 million tons annually, virtually all of it reused or stored for future reuse. Around 12.9 million tons flow directly into engineering works and reclamation projects. About 500,000 tons become landfill cover. Another 500,000 tons are processed into recycled aggregates or manufactured sand. So the asphalt from Kai Tak didn't disappear, it was transformed. It became part of roads, foundations, and earthworks across Hong Kong. The runway that once carried passengers to every corner of the globe ground down, sorted, and spread across the territory in 1,000 different construction projects. But not all of it was recycled, some of it was preserved. At the far end of where the runway once stretched into the harbor, there's now Tak Runway Park. Phase 1 opened on August 10, 2014, and the entire park was completed by 2016. The design deliberately retains part of the original runway surface, integrating it into the park's layout. The yellow and black checkerboard markings at the runway's end, the very markings that pilots use to navigate the terrifying runway 13 approach between apartment buildings, remain preserved in place. There's also a subtle, almost poetic touch. The leisure seats in the park are shaped like the number 13, a quiet tribute to the runway designation that made Kai Tak famous among aviators worldwide. The park also continues the environmental philosophy of the demolition project itself, with paving materials that include locally manufactured recycled glass pavers and permeable pavers. There's a deeper historical symmetry here that rewards a moment's attention. When the runway was originally built in the 1950s, the construction materials came from the excavation of nearby Kowloon Hills and a granite outcrop called Sung Wong Toi. Starting on December 26, 1955, 2,000 trucks a day hauled rock from those hills to create the land the runway sat on. The project required building 2 vehicular bridges and 9 pedestrian footbridges just to manage the traffic. An entire landscape was dismantled to create the airport. And when the airport was dismantled in turn, its materials flowed back into the city's construction ecosystem. The cycle completed itself. Even Kai Tak's wartime history follows this pattern. During the Japanese occupation in the 1940s, the military demolished the residential area of Kai Tak Bund to obtain sand and gravel for expanding the runway. They used Allied prisoners of war to build 2 concrete runways, and they destroyed the historic wall of the Kowloon walled city, mining it for construction materials. The runway was built from the ruins of homes and heritage. Decades later, its own ruins would be recycled too. The demolition also uncovered unexpected treasures. During the initial phase of the Kai Tak development project, which began in earnest in 2008, archaeological investigations revealed remnants of a pavilion and bridge, including the foundation stone of the pavilion and some bridge pillars. These artifacts, buried for decades beneath the airport's infrastructure, were preserved in place for future public display. The airport had been built on top of history, and demolishing it brought that history back to light. Not everything about the post-closure period went smoothly, though. In the years after Kai Tak closed, the site became what critics called a dirty, ugly wasteland. A cement mixing plant operated on the grounds under a supposedly temporary 3-month lease, a lease that was renewed over 40 times. The heavily polluting facility became a symbol of bureaucratic inertia, sitting on land meant to be transformed into a vibrant new community. Public opposition also flared over initial redevelopment plans proposing to truncate the former runway for land reclamation. The debate pitted heritage preservation against the city's appetite for developable land. The runway had become more than infrastructure. It had become memory. The transformation did eventually come. AECOM won a $60 million contract for infrastructure design and construction supervision. The 320-hectare site was reimagined as a model for future urban development. The Kai Tak Cruise Terminal opened in 2013, bringing ocean liners to where jumbo jets once parked. Residential towers began rising across the former apron area. And then came the crown jewel. On March 1, 2025, the Kai Tak Sports Park officially opened. It's the largest sports infrastructure project in Hong Kong's history, a 28-hectare complex built at a cost of nearly 30 billion Hong Kong dollars, roughly 3.86 billion US dollars. The complex features a 50,000-seat main stadium with a retractable roof, an indoor sports arena configurable for up to 10,000 seats, and a public sports ground seating 5,000. The first major musical event held there was Coldplay's Music of the Spheres World Tour, 4 shows between April 8th and 12th, 2025, drawing a combined audience of nearly 184,000 people. They stood and sang on ground that was once taxiway and tarmac, on foundations that contain, in some molecular sense, the recycled remains of the old airport itself. When the redevelopment is fully complete, approximately 150,000 people will live on the old Kai Tak site, making it one of the densest urban areas in the world. From runway to neighborhood, from asphalt to aggregate to apartment foundation. So where did the 10,000 tons of Kai Tak asphalt actually go? The honest answer is everywhere. It was sorted, crushed, sieved, and redistributed across Hong Kong's construction landscape. It became road base under highways you might drive on today, drainage fill beneath buildings you might walk past. Some of it still sits exactly where it always was, preserved in a park where you can stand on the original runway markings and look out across the harbor. The Kai Tak demolition wasn't just an act of destruction, it was an act of transformation, one that helped Hong Kong develop construction waste recycling practices that now recover 90% of all demolition materials. The airport that once connected Hong Kong to the world was broken down and woven back into the fabric of the city itself. Richard Siegel turned off the lights at 1:16 in the morning on July 6, 1998. But the materials of Kai Tak never really went dark. They just changed form. And if you're walking through Hong Kong today, there's a reasonable chance you're walking on a piece of runway 13 right now. You just can't see it anymore.